So I'm finally getting back to this railing project. I haven't worked on it for at least a couple weeks. It always seems like to get the time, I want to have enough time to really get into it instead of just a couple minutes at a time. Otherwise it would have been done a long time ago. I could have done one little piece, but I want to show it all. For that I need to set aside blocks of time all at once. Otherwise it's not very convenient, it's not very effective. So let's get back to this and get the spacers in these, and then we'll get the rail down and start getting the pieces attached to it. 55 would have been too long. I only need it to be about 52. We'll print one about 52 thick for that one. Okay, so I need a 5mm without a taper. It's just going to be a simple spacer, and then a 52mm. This one's 55, so I can just cut 3mm off of it, move it over, pull it down, 5mm. That one's done. Now this one I need to cut off. Okay, select that, intersect the faces. Well, let's see how long it'll take. 14.5 hours. We'll be back and see it tomorrow. You can kind of see the spacers. So I have no spacers under the first one, a small spacer, a bigger spacer, and then a much bigger spacer. And then I have another piece that needs to go under one of these. I've forgotten which one it is because it's been so long, but I'll be able to see from the bottom. So let's go take care of that first and get these other spacers in. The first support has no spacer. This next one has a 5mm thick spacer. And then we have a 15mm spacer. This next one is a 25mm spacer, but if we look underneath, I've got it designed or planned out so that this metal piece goes just to that groove where the lights are going to be. You can see that one's short, and it's short by about this amount. So I'm going to add this spacer in here on top of the bigger spacer just to get that out to there. Just going to add this spacer, and with this one I didn't even taper it. It's just a flat-sided, straight-sided spacer. Now we're out to just about that groove where the lights are going to go. Yeah, the next one, on this top one, is that thick 52mm spacer. So hopefully I got that right, and it'll give the right distance out. And we're going to ignore those extra screws. Need to get the right driver for this because this is one of the star bit type ones. It's the only screws that I could find that is happy with the length as far as local ones, and that would fit the diameter of these. And even those, I think I show it, I don't know, grinding these backs out to fit that. So it has these little ridges on that would hold the decking material, but I don't need that or want that for what I'm doing. It gives it kind of an oval profile like the screws that came with it. So by grinding the screw a little bit like that, then it fits the original piece better. It fits in there fairly nicely. Could go a little bit more still, but that should do it. Slowly screw that into there. Good news is, it went on there real nicely. It fits nice. Bad news is, I think I need to space it out a little bit more still. because I want to keep this space back here. So I think I need to space that out more still, which is unfortunate. That means I shortened it unnecessarily when I redid that. So I still need to print another piece that's slightly bigger for this spot. Other than that, I can take the railing down now and attach the bracket pieces. Boy, from this angle you can sure see the curve, because it's curving out around this piece of wall, which is really important, so you can't get trapped in it. So I want to make sure I keep this spacing good between the rail and the trim piece, so that as you're coming up and down the rail, or if you're holding onto the rail, there's no chance on getting trapped in here. The rest of them look pretty good. Just this one looks like I still need to make it slightly bigger. Yeah, so I need at least another 3 millimeters. Well, shucks. And you can see I haven't finished cleaning out the groove, but that'll happen a little bit later. We'll get this railing taken off and get the brackets attached underneath. We'll get the bottom bracket pieces attached next. Figure out where those are going to be. Before I add these brackets, and of course I'm going to, after I add these and get everything fitted, I'll have to take it apart again to put a finish on it, and I still have to cut the ends and put the returns, so there's a lot to do still. But before I do those, I'm going to ease the edges of this groove, because right now it's just very, very sharp edges, and that'll be a problem later. I'm just going to use a piece of the belt sanding belt and basically just start it in there and have it at an angle, so then it just cuts the sharp edge off of that just slightly. There, now it's just not so sharp. And of course that track, or that groove, is where the lights are going to go later. And I will be doing some sanding later. Right now, we'll get these figured out where those are going to be. All right, there's my spacing. Now let's get those marked for drilling. I'm going to line those up. So I've got the marks for the top and bottom of the brackets. I just got to put them the proper spot in and out. You know, how far away from the wall. And of course, this is the wall side. This is the middle of the stairway side. And we'll figure out exactly how far those need to go. And with one of these, it saddles right on there. And then I want this edge to be pretty much even with that groove, so it's not covering up the light, but I don't want it any further than that way, because then I'll lose too much strength for where the screws are going to go. So again, I've got the marked top and bottom, so kind of center that and this direction, and then we can figure out where that is. It looks like if I put that slightly covering that groove, yeah, because there's like a little V groove along here for the center line. So if I come to the top edge of that V groove, it looks like it's just about right. And that'll give me the placement for that. So that's where my screw holes need to be. So pre-drill for that, and I'll be able to get those attached. There we go. And then the center of that spot. And we'll get the rest of them down the whole thing. And I've got a piece of tape on there because I don't have any drill stop things that clamp onto the drill bit. So pre-drill until I get to approximately that tape. So trying to get right for the center of that, or go right for the center of that. The railing piece does have a little bit of movement it can make here. So if I've got the hole slightly off center, it still should be fine. Or one slightly in further than the other, it still should line up fine. This is probably where a brad point bit would do better, and there'd be less chance of wandering as I'm starting. Okay, so this is the one that I think I need to extend more, so I won't clamp anything to it right now. I'll start with these two. All right, yeah, I don't have to get them all the way tight. I just need to get them so that it's holding onto the bracket and can't slide off anymore. All right, so that's still loose, but it can't get past that nub of the bracket. So that's kind of what I want, is still with some play, but not being able to slide off. Okay, you can see this one has to go in a ways still, and that one does also. Now I'm going to pull this one into place. And that'll help pull the other one into place. There we go. I got the placement where I want it. Now we still need to get that one. See if its placement is okay or not. So the placement is actually pretty good for the bracket, but I need to add a little bit more to the spacer because it's not out to where it's supposed to be. So this one, I can go ahead and loosen more, though I think I should have put the screws up slightly higher. So I may have to re-drill this one, because I'm not happy with that. So I need to print a little bit of a spacer still, and then I'm going to re-drill these holes, fill the old ones. Okay, that one I'll re-drill slightly up. I'll fill those two holes with epoxy when we get to the next step. Everything else looks pretty good. I can start figuring out the returns. So I just need maybe a 2 or 3 millimeter thicker. Let's see. Well, that's unfortunate. That means my original plan and estimate for this was correct. And then I thought I was wrong, so I shortened it 3 millimeters. Turns out I wasn't wrong. If I had just left it alone, it would have been just right. Well, I'll add a 3 millimeter more spacer onto this one, and then that'll be good for there. And they're amazingly strong. I mean, you could park your car on these. They're solid plastic, basically. We took this railing up to this point so that it would be an equal distance from all the stairs. If you measure the nose of the stairway, it's a certain distance. So I need to do the same thing on the other side. So I need to come back 6 inches and then cut it at half of this angle so that I have an equal piece, and then I'll put them together. If we go on the other side and figure out where that ends up. I'll cut this piece first so I'll know how far back, and I'll just keep inching up onto it until I get it exactly right. The return on the bottom one is simpler. I can just put it in where I want. So we'll start by cutting this one at the 45 to put that end in, and we'll get that one started. I'll loosen the screws to all these brackets so I can get that railing off and get the first cuts. So we'll cut the angle on that, and it goes this direction. I've made a mark on there. It's not the right spot, but it's the right angle, because otherwise sometimes I'll cut the wrong direction. So this way it reminds me which way to go. So I've got the saw set that direction, cut a 45 across there to go with the return. Okay, so I'll get this lined up. It's not critical, so I can cut a little bit extra if I need to. So as long as I get that point cut off, in fact, I don't even care all the way about the entire point, because that's going to be rounded over. So after I put them together, that's going to be sanded off so that there's not a point there. So even if I don't cut the whole point off, it's still going to work. Okay, I do need to make sure that it's down all the way and up against there. And I'm going to go ahead and use the clamp here, help hold it in place. Let's see what we've got. Okay, it looks like I've got the whole corner off. And as I said, even if I leave a teeny bit on there, it doesn't matter because of the way I'm going to use it. Is that all the way back? So I did leave just a tiny bit of flat spot, but as I said, it doesn't matter because that's going to be rounded off anyway. Okay, looks like a nice fit, nice clean cut. And I'm going to add a biscuit in there so that'll be halfway in there and halfway in here to help align it this direction. And then I'll use epoxy to glue it. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now the other piece. So instead of this one that I already had cut that I'd planned on using, I'm going to use the new piece because of this edge here and here. This was my first test for my original piece for the lighting, and I was going to have it shallow and have the lights face straight down. Then I decided I'd rather have it deeper and have the lights face sideways instead. So anyway, that leaves a narrow edge along here in comparison to that, which means I can't round it as much. So I'm going to use a piece of this to for that, and I'll just cut it to this length. But before I cut it, I'm going to put the biscuit pieces in here because it's easier to do now. So the biscuits I'm using are Ryobi ones, but when I went to buy them, and this is, I needed like 2 or 3 of them at that moment, but of course I bought the 100-piece pack, and they didn't have the size that I really wanted, which was a smaller size. So I took some of these bigger ones and just simply cut them down. So I took these and cut them down to this size to fit for this project. Just a very small amount first to make sure of the placement, and that puts it at that level. Could go lower. That really should be lower. Okay, I want it lower than that. Okay, now I can still go in more. Okay. Again, like I said, I'm sneaking up on it because I don't want to screw up and come out the back. I mean, it's the inside of the rail, you hardly see it, but I don't want to do it. And I've got plenty of room on this side still. Okay, I'm in far enough. Do the other side. Okay, that was better. It fits together nicely. Now let's add a second. Gonna add a second groove up higher. There we go. Yeah, there we go. All right, that looks good. Now we cut this one to length. That looks like I got it just right. And we'll glue that into place and tape it till the epoxy sets. That looks pretty good. For the other end, the top needs to be 6 inches tall, or 6 inches long. I need almost 20, so they're 15. Let's see, what are the marks on here? 5s? Okay, so 5, 10, 15. Need a little bit less than 20. There's 20. Come back a little bit, about like that, and lock it in place. And I can cut it a little bit long and then shorten it on the straight side, which would make it a lot easier. And I could always cut it and decide I have it wrong and cut it slightly different angle. And I have a decent amount for multiple tries, because this is the last piece of railing that I need to deal with. All right, so it's about probably almost 1/8 of an inch too long, but I can check the angle this way. Yeah, 1/8 of an inch too long, a few millimeters. Other than that, that looks good, and that would go up against the molding. In fact, the molding gets cut out to receive this. So we can double check this on the other side, see what it looks like, see if our angles look right. I think the last thing I'm going to do today is go ahead and glue this piece up and then call it a day. Take all that and mix it up. There's going to be some oozing, but I'm not going to worry about that. We'll do clean up around the edges with it later. Put that underneath to catch any of the drips. Well, that should hold that end in place, and we'll get the other end later. I got most of the glue cleaned up on here, the epoxy. Now I'm going to sand it. I put a mark here, and that's how far the slot is inside for the biscuit. So I got to just make sure I don't go past that mark when I'm sanding off this corner. But I obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious, I don't want to leave that corner at the bottom of the railing, because then you could run into it. So I'll round this off. Got the whole thing sanded lightly now, and I gave it a quick coating of this finish because it's what I had. That way it'll help seal it and keep it clean as I'm working on the next steps. Now I need to cut this end off to match the length and angle of the top piece where it changes angles. So first test fit with the return on it, and we're working to check the fit at the top because we cut both pieces a little long, like 1/8 of an inch long. So ideally, at least one of them still needs to be cut down so that they meet at the proper point. But first, we need to test it. You can see the fit is good. It's got a good contact there. You could probably sand it down just a little bit, but it looks good. So that's the first part of the fit. So I like that. Now we'll go to the top and see if we can get that figured out. Went ahead and printed a 5mm spacer for this one. I'm going to pull that out just a little bit to help get the railing itself to the position I want when it hits the door jamb area. All right, that gives that 5 more millimeters out from the wall. A little 3mm spacer for this one. I'm going to go ahead and add that one also. Now we can put this back on there. So the whole point of all these spacers is to keep this space with a good amount of space in there so there's no chance as you're coming up or down that you get trapped in here. So if the wall was right here, this would be the distance. So I needed to move it over that amount to account for the fact that this sticks out, and I don't want to cut that. And this wall back here is an inch and a half further in than this concrete wall anyway. All right, and then this spacer will allow this end to come into this piece of molding where I want it to be. And I still might need to cut off another 1/8 of an inch or something. So now we'll start test fitting this. So here I have the other piece that's cut to the same angle. And of course I can't get it forward right now because I need to cut that out. But this will give me an idea of how much I'm missing. I need to cut it back by that amount, and then I need to decide, can I cut it all off this one, or do I need to cut this one off? Regardless, this main rail still has to come off to assemble it and then to do all the finish work and get the lights in and all that. But if I can trim it off the one side, it'd be faster too. Wow, that's nice and level. So it just needs to go straight down from there by that amount. Yeah, it looks like I do need to cut this one down a little bit to get the height where it's supposed to be. I'm not particularly happy about that. Yep, it's too high. So I need to cut this one down once, and then I can cut this one down to fit it. So when I check the level on it, and again I need to trim out this molding piece so that it'll come forward, but right now I'm just checking to make sure that it's level, horizontal when those faces are lined up, and it's really quite close, but I think I need to trim it off at a slight steeper angle, just ever so slightly. If I level across it, of course the bubbles clear out of frame, but that's almost level. This side needs to come down just a little bit, which then would open up the top edge ever so slightly. There, you can see it opens up that just a touch. So I think if I sharpen that angle a little bit, then we'll get a better fit. So we'll do that. Be right back. I adjusted the angle ever so slightly. I think I've got a match. Now I need to shorten it, and I'll shorten it on the flat side so that I don't mess up that angle. So I need to shorten it until that just touches. And I should measure this to make sure I've got the 6 inches that I was after. Just about 6 inches, and that's where the other one is. So I think I need to go a little bit shorter still, but I need to start cutting this out so that I can get the spacing right and make sure that I've got it low enough. It's really close. So I think I might have to move this railing so I can work on that spot. Probably. So a little bit more of the stairway video. So we've got this to this step now. A viewer asked about the steps themselves and what they're covered with. So it's going to show that real quick. At least I hope it's real quick. First, you can plainly see, I decided to not go with the skirt board on either side of the stairway. I just took the finished material right up to the walls. I scribed them so that they're nice and tight, and then used sealer to make sure that it's sealed and no dust or things get behind it. So anyway, it's just right up against there. The riser and tread are both covered with laminate flooring. This is one of the spare pieces. I had one spare pack, and of course I won't get rid of it in case I need it. And this stuff's really good for covering tabletops too. The nosing is pre-finished maple. So I bought this at a local bargain building center kind of place, and they had some of this. Some of it wasn't great all the way across, but they were like 6-foot pieces, and I only needed slightly less than 4 foot for each one. So I was able to cut the ends off of it if it were bad. You can see it's an L shape with a shorter leg and then a little bit longer leg. This is a full-size depiction of the stairway. This piece of flooring, I put it like this, and then a strip of it back here. So I cut this edge off here, and then this edge off here so that it was nice and square and flat. So it's got one wide piece and then a narrow piece. The upright is just a piece of the flooring with both ends cut off and then cut to length. So basically, I started at one end of the stairs and worked my way down the whole thing, or up the whole thing. Got that piece of trim goes right there. And then this piece comes down, this piece butts up against it, and then the next one, and then down, that one butts up against it, and it's all glued into place with construction adhesive. So construction adhesive all around this area, and then that set in it, this pushed up against it. But that way you don't end up with any, you still have the full width, you still have it angled forward, but you don't have any place for your toe to catch when you're coming up.